On today's episode, it is another fun Friday episode featuring another special guest, another fan of the show, and it's another fan from Australia, a good friend of mine, Yint Aung. We're going to talk about the Padres, not just fandom in Australia, but also the highs and lows of his fandom over the course of the last few years, talking a little bit about the offseason blues we've been feeling, especially with our beloved Jurickson Profar gone, and much, much more. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Friday, January 24th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter/X or Blue Sky at Javipeno, Javiipeno. Also check out Just Baseball, a very good website where I write about the Padres and do their newsletter to keep you up to date on all things baseball. And unfortunately, lately, not much Padres stuff, but you can still go check that out. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. And speaking of running the game, my guest today, he runs Australia, let me tell you. It is my friend and listener of the show and Padres fan. That's the big part about this. Yint Aung. Sir, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Harvey. How are you? It's good to finally chat to you.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Hey, first of all, I got a little bit of buffer there, my bad. But for everybody who doesn't remember, I'm saying another fan because go check out my episode I did with Ben Lloyd a few weeks, maybe a month back. I forgot, where we talked about Australia fandom as well. And that was a lot of fun. And I want to start there with you again, right? Like, because you wanted to talk about a couple things having to do with just the baseball scene in Australia. But first, let's just talk about the Padres itself, right? How do you get into baseball, first of all? And how did you choose the Padres? And people who are watching on video, this is no slouch. This man is rocking the Ha-Seong Kim bobblehead. He's got the City Connect hat, the old school jersey. So old school jersey with City Connect hat. Much more of a fan than Mike. I look like a slob right now. Like, people would guess that you're the host of this show. But can you talk about that and how that origin, I guess, came to be?
The origins of like my Padres fandom.
Yeah, exactly.
So, just in baseball. Well, I think baseball is not that big here in Australia. Like, we are definitely more of a cricket, and I'd say like we have our own sort of like Aussie rules football. It's a very sports country, but for whatever reason, baseball it is here, but it's never been sort of like it's not as big as like I guess like our other sports, like rugby, etc. So I've always sort of been into it. I think like I played like softball in primary school, elementary school, and kind of knew about baseball. You grow up, you know about, your Babe Ruths, your Derek Jeters, your Ichiros. Like, they were like I guess like well-established names, as well as I guess like movies that came out. So like Sandlot Kids, Major League, is that the one with Charlie Sheen? Yeah. So it's always kind of been in like I guess like my life, but like there was never sort of like any there was never, or at least that I knew of, like any sort of like barrier of entry for me to watch any baseball games. So we had an Apple TV Plus subscription, and that showed Friday Night Baseball, and I was like, oh, cool. Like I've always found like baseball interesting. I know the rules of like how it works. Let's just watch a few games. And so like over the succeeding weeks, I just watched I watched a few games, like kind of got a feel of like my teams and stuff. I think I sat down actually, and this was just a day that I had off, a day that I had free, and sat down and watched Apple TV Plus. It was the San Diego Padres against the Atlanta Braves. At this point, I had no idea that, I'm going to be completely honest, I had no idea that San Diego had a team. Like, I knew of San Diego, of course, but I had no idea San Diego had a team. So I sat down and I just watched it. And they were down like 5-0. It was a Yu Darvish start. I remember it was quite vividly. I was like, it was a Yu Darvish start. They were down 5-0. They pulled him out of the game. And then they came back to win 8-5. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, what is this? What is this team? I love it. Like they've just got this sort of like, they've got this dog in them that I haven't seen in like that's what like attracted me to them. And then as well, this little guy as well, this little hustler, Ha-Seong Kim as well. Just seeing him play, that was incredible. So like from then on, I was like this team. I don't know they're not my team yet, but from there started watching more games. Started I guess like following like their history and things like that. I was like, yeah. I think the Padres are my team. Plus, they're called the Dads. Like, what's
it's a pretty great.
Like, oh yeah, that's cool. Yeah, you know, yeah.
Like
it's a pretty great name. It's like, oh yeah, you name your thing after animals. That's cool, but like the Dads, like.
Yeah, the animals is so basic, right? Like everybody's got an animal. Oh, you're an eagle. Oh, I'm a bird. Oh, I'm a like. What are we doing here?
I'm a tiger.
And frankly,
like,
and they never get crazy with the names too. They never do. I mean, they used to have Cleveland Spiders. Actually, I'm pretty sure at one point, but they don't have the crazy animals. Or I don't know. I just feel like we could really push it up. Washington Commanders football team really dropped the ball. They could have had something cool like the Firebirds or. I don't know, whatever other animals are out there. I almost said kangaroos, the stereotype of Australia, right? Washington kangaroos. Why not? But look, I mean, I relate to your story only because like I love it when fandom starts this way, because I think oftentimes people are so used to being like, oh, it's in the family. I grew up in this place. And then people would look down on me, for example, because for those who don't know by now, for some reason, oh, I'm from New Jersey and I follow the Padres. How did that happen? And I've been very liberal and very I've never understood this idea that it's less arbitrary to choose a team based on where you were born versus, hey, I like certain characteristics. It's either way. That's no shot to you because some people are like, hey, it's my city. I like it. But it's also weird to be like, well, what if you don't like your city? Or what if your city doesn't have a team in your case, right? So I found it ridiculous. And I mean, you had a better reasoning for, frankly, my Padres fandom. I was just like, I like a San Diego team already. And I have this podcast, so might as well. And I was looking from the Yankees. And then my Chargers fandom, the team that we're not allowed to talk about too much. I understand. Don't worry, San Diego people. It won't be long. But I literally decided, because I was a kid and I hated the classmates because they were mean to me. So I was like, I'm not doing New York, New Jersey teams. And I was like, oh, the Thunderbolt looks cool. Went from there. That's it. So I like your layers to that. And it's funny that you bring up Apple TV, like not the most beloved, highly reviewed broadcast when it originally started. Baseball fans are a little bit mean. As long as if you're not doing exactly what they want and very traditional, I think in a lot of ways. So there were some people on there, some that I know on that broadcast that got a lot of heat over that. It wasn't great, but just really interesting stuff, man. And we're going to talk a little bit more about your fandom as well. And just specifically, I think Australia baseball. I think actually, let's just jump into it now. Frankly, you mentioned to me that the baseball scene is interesting in Australia. What is going on exactly? Are you guys creating a super team also in secret?
I think we're slowly cooking. I will say that. That. I think in the last, so like the history of Australian baseball, it does go back like decades and decades. I would say in like the last 10, 15 years, it's starting to actually like pick up and people are taking it a little bit more seriously. And you'll be surprised about the amount of talent that comes out of this, because like I said, we're such like a sports nation. You'd be surprised about the amount of talent that comes out of this like ABL, so the Australian Baseball League system. Like for example, the Cleveland Guardians chose was an infielder, Travis Bazzana, I think that's his name. He's he's from Sydney. He's from Sydney. I saw him play like not that long ago, and there was just like like essentially like a minor league ballpark because of like the capacity and things like that. So there are so many talented people that have come either through the system or like through and up the system. For example, in Melbourne, so that the team, my hometown team, I forget how many years ago, but there was just this skinny South American kid named Ronald Acuna Jr. that no one knew about. It's just this 18-year-old kid that sort of like came through. And it's like, oh, right, okay. That like you see his like stuff everywhere at the ballpark. I'm like, oh, that Ronald Acuna Jr. Another example, Melbourne also had a pitcher when he was in his 20s. This is a Japanese pitcher that was like, in his still establishing his career. Yusei Kikuchi. So
yeah.
So it's like all these things that sort of like come through and stuff. Yeah. So it's people don't realize that like there are things that are happening. I think there were a couple of Tampa Bay Rays that were playing in Australia like last year. Like I was like watching a Rays game. I'm like, I know that kid. I was like, oh yeah, I saw him at Melbourne Ballpark like 2-3 years ago.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think things are slowly up, and the WBC was a good example as well. I think it was like the first time Australia had gone to like the quarterfinals. Of course, they got absolutely like destroyed by Japan.
Yeah.
But they did beat Korea, and we got very close like to defeating Cuba as well. So it's like, like I love my Australian team, but there was no chance they were gonna like Yamamoto was pitching. So
yeah, I mean, look, like greatness from small beginnings, man.
Yeah.
You got to start somewhere, and I really like that. That's really fascinating, though. I have heard of Bazanza, and I think he's going to be an interesting player for sure for Cleveland, especially because it's Cleveland. They know what they're doing. So, my friend, we still have much more to talk about, though. We must talk about the highs and lows of your fandom. What has it been like following this team, which has truly been a roller coaster? And I don't think it's been talked about enough that, yes, the Padres are in this new era of actually, for lack of a better term, caring, but it's been it has vacillated greatly year to year over these past few seasons. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, as well as the off-season overall temperature check. And yes, we will talk a little bit. And dare I say, light a candle or pour one out for our boy Jurickson Profar. We'll get into that in a second, guys. But first, and forgive the abrupt pause and change on the video, guys, but you know what? In the original recording, I read the wrong ad, and we wouldn't want to disrespect one of our great sponsors today, and that is our friends over at SelectQuote. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, World Series, Olympics, and that same goes for all of life. And having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. It makes it look easy finding the perfect life insurance policy, and usually it's not. They've helped over 2 million customers find $200 billion in coverage since 1985. That's a lot. And unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. And if you're in good health, well, let me tell you, you might even qualify for same-day coverage for up to $5 million, no medical exam required, and it's more affordable than you'd think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. So get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Remember, go to selectquote.com/lockedon today to get started. One more time for me. That's selectquote.com/lockedon. SelectQuote, they shop, you save. And just like that, everybody, we are back thriving and vibing. It's a segment number 2 of this Locked On Padres special Fun Friday edition. Something that I haven't stuck to, I'm not going to lie to y'all, to my longtime listeners. I usually use Fun Friday for doing something way different on this show. And frankly, sometimes my Fun Friday is just answering a random question about the Padres infield. But you know what? Not this time. Yint Aung joining me from Australia. We just talked about his fandom and everything about not just Australian baseball, but the Padres and everything. Now I want to talk about specifics. I want to talk a little bit about like these past few years, because that is actually relative to right now. And as I was describing before the break, it's like, let's reach back even before the Apple TV and everything. You start in 2019. Basically, that's when I choose to believe that this is when the Padres era of baseball started. I understand that it technically started on Jerry Preller in 2015, but those are a bunch of weird trades. And guess what? There have been weird teams who have made a series of ill-advised trades before. And then they started rebuilding. And then they signed Eric Hosmer. We're going to leave it at that. But then they also signed Manny Machado in 2019. And that's when I truly think it started, because that was like wait, that's like a legit like superstar player. And then you have 2020, which was miserable for the rest of the planet, but for baseball Padres, it was great, right? And it was the Tatis, mega moment. We have the Cardinals. 2021, second half collapse. 2022, good despite Tatis being gone the whole year. And they trade for Juan Soto, and they beat the Dodgers in the playoffs. 2023, the least clutch team, the third least clutch team of the last 30 years, according to Fangraphs, and they were that bad. And then 2024, you had this year, which was awesome. Then it ended in poor fashion, and among other things, featuring some big trades, Peter Seidler's passing. But let's talk about, let's start with the lows. You know what I mean? Why not? Let's just get the lows out of the way. What are some of kind of your lowest moments, do you think, being part of this Padres fandom since you've been part of it?
I think you mentioned it, Harvey. 2023 was a very low point. I think, we don't. I don't want to talk. I think that just left a very sort of like bitter taste in my mouth. I was like, what is this? What is this team like? Who are they? Like, what is this? Like, I felt like that was a very low point, and I think because of that season, like you couldn't really see. I guess you don't really remember. Actually, there probably weren't that many high points in the 2023 season. To be honest, there were like higher points, but I wouldn't say like high points at all. 2023 was a low point, and just because of how close we were, I think that's probably the worst part. Is the fact that we're so close to making the playoffs. So we're like 2 games off, like compared to like the Diamondbacks, like that. Yeah.
It's really funny that season, one of the things that was so funny about it was like, I remember they surged late August, and that says so much that they had that like brief win streak, right? Bogart started hitting. I remember, and I believe it was the Giants series when they ended up losing it. This was the infamous Josh Hader incident, if you remember, when Hader was like, I want to play. And Bob Melvin's like, that's what we're doing. I was like, what?
Yeah, I think everyone was just checked out at that point of the season.
It was just so weird. And they've taken shots at Josh Hader ever since. Dare I say the most fun thing that happened in the playoffs this year was Josh Hader blowing that game against the Mets. That was iconic.
Yeah. Shout out
not the Mets, the Tigers.
Shout out to my good Astros fan, my friend who is a massive Astros fan. Just gonna shout him out there. That. Remind him of that Josh Hader.
That was like, it was so good. It was so good. He was talking smack about the Padres this season. I just thought it says something that players openly were like, we don't like that guy. Yeah, I understand he was trying to get paid, but I bet it was a little bit more than that. I just think they were like, come on, man. Like, we're about to be in the playoffs. We're not the Brewers. We've treated you okay over here. Come on. But I mean,
exactly.
That's another one. I think another low for me. Ooh, man. I think that the Tatis suspension, just in terms of a condensed moment, is the lowest. Now Peter Seidler is obviously overall probably the lowest for obvious reasons that we don't have to relitigate too much. We'll get to him actually in the next segment. But I think it's because they just traded for Soto. And for you to have just traded for this guy and then Tatis gets popped for PEDs, I know they end up having a pretty good postseason run, but even still, it's like the worst timing. And I'm actually visiting my friend, and this is 22. So for me, at least, it was like slowly we're like coming out of COVID and whatnot. Like, we're slowly getting out of that. So like, I'm really excited to like hang outside with my friends again. And I'm traveling with my friend to DC, and my friend who knows nothing about baseball, I just go like one of those, I'm just like I like lost it. And he's like, what happened? And I'm like, and he knew like Tatis, I think he like knew that name, because this is like height of powers Tatis, basically. Like, this is like really like this guy is it. Gets popped for PEDs. The Jeff Passan tweet comes in, and I'm just like silent for the last like 20 minutes of the car ride, like
Mhm.
just totally dejected, and it just sapped a lot of the vibe out of the building. It was so rough, especially considering the last time I had visited my friends, it was a great game in which he like walked off against Houston. Let's make fun of the Astros again. It was Astros. It was 3-2. This was the medallion spin that he did. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen in a baseball game.
Yeah.
It was awesome. But yeah, I just remember like that was there was something about that coming out. It was really fortuitous, honestly. Every time something good happens for the Padres, it's required that something bad happens too. I mean, what can I say? But when it comes to the highs, what were kind of like your highs? I think over the course of your fandom, which is obviously not encompassing from the Jack Murphy 1984 team, but what do you think is some of your highlights?
Honestly, I would say like my highlight would definitely be the playoff run, the 2022 playoff run with the Dodgers and the Padres. So
Man,
I remember. Yeah, so like I remember because I started following the season, the Padres from like I think whenever that Braves Padres game was from onwards. It was like it was established, like the season was quite established then, and like definitely went through all like the highs and lows and all the slumps and things like that. And then just that playoff run, I was like, what? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Like Trent Grisham has just become like Barry Bonds, Barry Bonds at Citi Field. What do you mean that like like he's just like surged out of nowhere and like Joe Musgrove? What do you mean he's like that game where he like just became a dog for the Mets against the Mets for the Padres? But yeah, it was that that Dodgers. So like following that whole thing. It ignited my detestment for the Dodgers, if you will. So like I knew how intense that that playoff run was going to be, whichever side it went through, like just emotionally. So it was, I think, yeah. So we ended up like I remember like the Padres ended up almost clinching like the next round, and I was at that last game. And funnily enough, I was at my hairdresser, like getting my hair bleached, and I'm like watching it like on my phone. I'm just like, oh, like just like real sort of pensive and real quiet.
Is everyone just around you like, what are you watching?
Yeah, exactly. Here, just imagine this. Imagine this with like an apron like around my head and just like foil in my apron around my body and foil in my head, and just like watching a stream with like headphones in. I'm just like, but yeah, and then just started slowly seeing that game turn around. Oh my god, that was thrilling. Yeah, I was getting my hair washed as Josh Hader struck out Freddie Freeman. It was amazing.
Oh man!
So that was definitely a highlight. That season was that 2022 season was a highlight. People don't remember, but people don't realize, like, even though the Phillies did have our number that year, Josh Hader, there we go.
Seriously.
People don't remember how close that series was. Like, if you go back and you look at the box scores and things like that, it's like, oh no, it was actually surprisingly close. So yeah, that was definitely a highlight. And then I would say last year, the 2024 playoff season, or just the season in general. That Michael King game, everyone remembers the Tatis bomb at Petco Park against the Braves. That was like, oh my god, that was just like, that's like years of him waiting to get back into the playoffs.
Oh yeah.
That was an incredible moment, but like that Michael King start, that was like no one talks about that as much as the Tatis bomb.
Yeah, I mean, 24 was just insane. Which is why like it ended poorly, but like I really do stand by. Now, the only thing that got me upset about how 24 ended, which you know what, why not? I'll just throw it in there. It's been getting me views lately, apparently. Like I just hated the media bias was obscene and really gross with Ken Rosenthal and with the I get comments every time I say this where they're like, well, don't taunt the fans. And I'm like, there is no sport in the world in which we act like fans are elementary school kids being taken on a field trip, right? Like it's fine. Them taunting, you taunting. So like the idea that means we're allowed to throw beer at you is insane. But then as soon as Manny Machado tosses a ball into a dugout, and Dave Roberts then later admits he contrived the outrage on that, just drove me insane. 22 was just like, I want to beat the Dodgers. Like, man, screw these guys, they're rivals.
Yeah.
It's funny that that playoff run features two funny things. I was at Comic-Con, not during the first game, but the day of the first game. And I'm like, getting home and I have it, of course I'm locked in. But it's like, I was like essentially there where the game was being played. I have a friend who had tickets and just like didn't give me any. So shout out Just Baseball, Peter Apple. If you're at all watching this, I've got my eye on you still for that. And they're like, well, you should have been going anyway. And I'm like, well, I didn't have playoff money tickets. What do you want from me? But that was fun. And then 22, and then the round after that, I'm with my cousin, like in Maryland, which is the 3-hour drive from Jersey, basically. Celebrating my sister's birthday. Everyone's asleep. He's just in the hot tub, and I'm just like stress eating in the kitchen at like 2:00 in the morning. Just like, and it's like he has no idea what's going on. Like he's just out there, like what's. So that's when that happened. The Cronenworth hit, the Soto hit. I'm gonna rewatch that game, frankly, after we're done recording, just to like feel something, because we gotta talk about we gotta talk about the offseason, man, because
the Crony hit,
the Crony hit, everything there, the Grisham stuff, but we gotta talk about the general offseason temperature, especially given the Jurickson Profar news with him signing a 3-year, $42 million deal with the Atlanta Braves. But before we do that, guys.
And hold up just a second. I know, guys, awkward transition. Like I said, the original, I messed up. But we are here to talk about another legendary sponsor. I couldn't let these guys down. That's our friends over at FanDuel, because from the first whistle to the final score, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra little, a little bit of jazz, a little bit of excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
And just like that, everybody, we are back into the last segment here with my buddy Yint Aung, an Australian homie, Padres fan, coming at you live for both, basically across the world. We're global here. And now we got to talk about the offseason, man. And I want to know your perspective on how it's felt like this offseason before I give my thoughts, especially given the recent news that Jurickson Profar, for those who didn't hear, yesterday signed with the Atlanta Braves, 3 years, $42 million. Decent contract for him. It was about what was expected. I think some people might have said 3 years, 45, but this seems like this is what was kind of expected for him. And the Braves get our beloved from one of the best things that happened in 2024, which was the Padres getting this guy for $1 million for 1 year. But the negative of that was he was so good, he signed with another team. But what is your kind of current vibe with the offseason so far?
Cold. I was I'm into, I think I was in two minds. So I'm in two minds, like initially sort of seeing what those dastardly Dodgers were doing, however many hours away from San Diego. It was like, it's kind of like seeing, like your rich neighbors open up like these fancy like Christmas presents and you get sort of like nothing. It's like, cool. It must be nice. It must be nice to get something. So that was it's been very sort of initially like very sort of dejecting for me to sort of see everything that's happening, in LA, and as well as like all around the league as well. So I thought to myself, like the first part, so I was like, that's all right. They'll just just let Preller cook, basically. Where I'm like waiting for him. I'm like, okay, cool. It's like, it's all right. It's like, we don't have to get sort of antsy around like all these moves that are happening, but he will make moves. And it's like, it's kind of getting to the point. It's like, can we make some moves now? Like, it's like, okay, it's like, what's actually happening? Like, I know, like, you know, we usually wait till like the off season simmers down. You know, you've got your Sotos off the board, and you know, you have your Sasaki off the board now, and you have your how like Corbin Burns, etc. So now it's like, it's kind of getting to that point. It's like, are we gonna do anything? What is going on here? And then, you know, once you hear about, I guess, like, not even like the signing drama, but like the like the lack of signings, sort of like free agent signing drama, but like all the other sort of like side of the family issues and stuff. That's been a bit of a distraction as well. So that's been like, so the off season has been slow, and it's been like slow and painful for us Padres fans.
Yeah.
And I think the real kick in the teeth was seeing Profar sign to the Braves. Part of me is like, get your money, King. I'm so happy for you, because he was like one of my favorite players. But but the other part of me is like, oh, like they got a good one.
Yeah.
Like Jurickson, they got Jurickson. He's a good one. And like it's like yeah, I'm very conflicted. Like, damn, so happy for him to finally get that contract, but also like, damn, like I wish it was with us.
Do you have a like? Ah, man, it's just, I think that this I mean, all they've done is sign Martin Maldonado, more or less. That's basically all they've done. A negative 1.5.
Oh, we're going to the World Series. What are you talking
about? with Martin?
This is, we're World Series bound.
Maybe they thought it was Russell Martin or something like that. It's like, well, he retired a while ago. I think, I mean, I'm going to ask you your thoughts on this in a second, but I think that the storyline is as simple as this for the Padres this offseason. So it's about the Dodgers, but it's mostly just the ownership woes. I do think it's important to not like immediately take a side on like the lawsuit, whether it be Shield or Robin Matt, whatever. But it is hard to ignore that this is a team that exceeded its highest attendance record ever, most ticket sales record ever. They had one of the most fun seasons ever, just from afar. And by the way, they've been going up in attendance for multiple years. It's not like they had their biggest and they were 19th in the league. No, they've been top 5 in the sport for a few years now, right? And this year they were, I believe they were number 3 or number 4 or something like that. The energy is all through the roof, and it's hard not to notice the pattern of, ever since Peter's passing, the biggest move this team has made is trading away Juan Soto. Now, I understand why they did it, but you look at the team now, and I was wrong about this, but this is a team that is under the luxury tax threshold, which I believe is 244. I believe this year at 241. They're at about 202 million. You know, I know it's not easy to add another like 12 million on that, but I do think it says something that, say, a Kyle Higashioka. I never thought, even if I did think that they were just trying to reset the luxury tax threshold this offseason, that's what I was hoping for, that they were just like, we can't have this increasing 15%, 20%, 30% increase. We don't have Dodgers money. But for them to reset it and to just hang out is not a good sign. And instead, all we've been hearing about is just trading away guys to clear up some space. Now, don't get me wrong, some of this is self-inflicted wounds. Maybe you didn't have to pay Bogarts. Maybe you didn't have to pay Darvish or Cronenworth and these guys. But it just adds up to, that's why I think a lot of people have been taking Shield's side, where it's just like, ever since Peter's passing, you guys cut, we're below luxury tax, you're still not doing anything. And it makes people wonder, like, after all that, is the biggest offseason signing going to be Martin Maldonado? I don't know. But also there's a lot of blame to put on Preller. I mean, they gave up their top 2 pitching prospects for relievers at the deadline this year. They were great. Shout out Tanner Scott, who is now a Dodger traitor. But still, it just feels like that's the story of this offseason. It's one of the reason that people making fun of the Padres is kind of weak to me. I've mentioned this on my last 2 highly critically acclaimed episodes from the Dodger Nation. But it's just very weak to be making fun of the Padres. Like, our ownership is just a mess right now. Like, that's part of why this has been a mess. But I don't know, man. I mean, what are you kind of feeling for the rest of this offseason? Do you have any hope? Because it's not fun. And the worry is this something that is just going to continue for a while, and they're just going to be like, you know what, we're just not going to do anything, and then after Machado and Tatis, after those contracts are up, we might just go back to the Padres of old.
Oh God, I hope that's not the case, because it's I feel for season ticket holders, and I feel for the attendees over there, like in San Diego, to invest so much of your heart. Like, you know, it's not easy to hold season tickets and, you know, go to the ballpark and things like that. That's a lot of time. And I think I'm hoping, you know, they don't go back to the Padres of old, because it's a real sort of it's really disrespectful to the fan base, who, like, as you were saying, you know, top 5 attendance and things like that. They expect all these things. It's like we as fans have put in whatever we can, you know, financially, time-wise, etc., etc. We expect some sort of reciprocation. Not expecting a one soda deal. Not expecting a 7. I honestly, like, I'm not expecting them to do what the LA deferrals are doing in Los Angeles, but we do expect some moves, right? We expect some moves. We expect some sort of establishment. Show that we are serious with this organization, and know that we're not going back to the to the Padres of old, because that would be incredibly demoralizing. I'll still follow San Diego, of course, but like, it needs to be sort of like, the ownership needs to take this, I guess, like a little bit more seriously, or, you know, as seriously as they allege that they are going to be.
It's funny you brought up the deferrals, but I'll have you know, Anthony Santander's deal with the Blue Jays is $61.75 million worth deferred. Look, I don't know money anymore. My take is I think the problem is that he said don't. My take is that, like, I think that I think people are missing that. No, it's bad that the sport cannot have more teams, even if they're good, go after top free agents. The problem is that, like, anyone can get Tyler O'Neill. Anyone can get Jack Flaherty right now. Those players are in reach for a lot of teams, and history shows as long as you're in the top half, you have a chance of payroll. So it's frustrating.
Yeah.
And I think that the other thing, the reason why I feel like this offseason stinks is because why is no other team trying? I've made this joke a lot. Why is no other division trying in baseball? It's only Giants, D-backs, Padres, Dodgers out here, apparently.
What is with the NL West? What is specifically
I don't know what's going
this division that this happens to be? Like,
I have no idea.
Money.
I mean, D-backs ownership, and you know what? In fairness to the Pods, it's like they don't have too many crazy deals on their team right now. Now, they did do Corbin Carroll, but they did a smart, like, I forgot what it was, like 6 years, 110. I'm going to say I might be, you know, a little bit overshooting that, but that's not that crazy. And then they gave Corbin Burns a deal. So you can find ways. It's just annoying that the NL West is the only division apparently that's trying. The Centrals for both leagues are a joke, frankly. Nationally. What is just to change courses for just a second, what has your experience been interacting with the Dodger Nation, been online or in person?
I try not to. I try not to.
Man.
Everything I've seen online is just bait, and it's just like they're goading a reaction. I'm just like, you know what? I know exactly what you're trying to do, and I'm not going to indulge. I do have a good friend of mine who, shout out to him. You know who you are if you listen to this. We have a baseball group chat with like a few of us.
Nice.
That follow MLB here, in Australia, and he's the lone Dodgers fan. Don't worry, the clowning happens in that group chat, but that's because we're all like good friends and things like that. But as far as like interacting online, I have said certain things. Then they're not. They're like, you know, like I'll say things like the Los Angeles deferrals, like as a joke, but there will be someone that would sort of get riled up from that.
Yeah, 100%.
And there were people that like really that try to troll me and interact with me, and like, it's like you guys do you. We're just gonna, you guys do you, basically.
Yeah, I mean,
so I try not
I
to
get
interact with them as much. It's just like, yeah, of course you get it. All the comments that you get on your
Yeah,
videos.
I mean, and mine is not as bad. At least I'm not getting flamed by Enrique Hernandez. Shout out my guy DSG. That was amazing. Everybody go check out Devin Sports Gospel. Everyone go check out Devin Sports Gospel. Made fun of Enrique Hernandez and he just destroyed him. Like Enrique destroyed him, and I'm like, nope.
That was amazing.
Full medal to him. That was a
cannot help but respect. I was like, yeah, that's I love that. Stuff. That's beautiful.
I feel like I should have asked this earlier as well, but I'm realizing now I talked a lot this podcast. But let me ask you, what does the time difference like ever really affect you in a major way with watching games? Because for me right now, as I'm recording this, it's like afternoon for you, and I'm about to be going to bed. So like, does it affect like what is it? Yeah. How many games do you miss? Are you one of those people who you like record it, follow no news, and you watch it the next day, or watch it when you have time? Like, what's that kind of the schedule in that regard?
I know that's a good question. So most games are actually on at a pretty reasonable time for me because I follow like a team out in the West. So San Diego time is actually not that far. Like as far as like time difference is actually not that bad. So say a Friday night game at Petco Park would start at like 11:45, like 12 p.m. for me. So most games are on like during the day. So that works out perfectly for like, say like I'm on my lunch break at work, I'll watch the game, or like I'll listen to like the game and things like that just on my headphones. I like during the day. The only time the time difference has an effect on me, or at least like people who like live in my state or like that part of the country, is when they play out east. So like say certain Phillies games will start at like 6 a.m. or like 9 a.m. or like, if they play in like New York, it will start like significantly earlier. Washington. Fun fact. Speaking of Washington, I remember like I watched like the Padres National Series at Nationals Park, and I was like, okay, cool. It was like 2 out of 3, great. Like the next game, it was like the Dylan Cease start. It was on at like 3 a.m. for me. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna like whatever. I'm just gonna sleep through it. That's fine. I'm just gonna sleep through it.
You messaged me
like,
this. I think you messaged me.
Yeah. And then I woke up at like 7:30. Get ready for work. I check the score, and I'm like, oh, I slept through a no-hitter. And it's like one of the only sort of like games like in the season that I missed. I'm like, oh my god, I literally slept through Padres history.
That's look, it happens. I'm really obsessed with the idea like of a game being around 6 o'clock and you like eating breakfast watching baseball. Like just the possibility that could be happening.
Oh, yeah.
I love that
idea. No, that
out here
happens.
Out here in the States, it's possible to be watching football in the morning, which is very weird for us people on the East Coast. It's like, wow, you're like having brunch and watching football. That sounds great. But this is even crazier to me, the baseball one. But dude, this has been so much fun. Yeah. Love hearing from international listeners. Love hearing that there are just people in general from wherever that follow the Padres and have been following them during a stretch. Hopefully things get better for the team and the vibes increase overall. Maybe we get a signing. Maybe we get at this point, I'll just take a trade. I just want something to happen at this point. Like it'd be fun. But lastly, everybody go check him out on Twitter/X if you'd want. Yes, this is Yint. You can see it on the YouTube for a better, if you can't spell that, there you go. IG, this is Yint Aung as well. And of course, that does it for today's episode, guys. You can follow me on Twitter/X at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO. Go check out Just Baseball. Fun episode. Monday we'll be doing the mailbag. Feel free to send all of your questions. Message me at the handle. Leave YouTube comments. Whatever you want. I'll answer it because why not? Because there's nothing else to do out here. And I will probably not have the same head of hair People left some interesting comments on the last video regarding my hair. I will not have the same hair next time, for better or worse. So until that next time, everybody, you've listened to Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. And until next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. All right, for our faithful homies, take care.